So the other day you would have seen we were out at Redstar Raceway for the two-stroke day, and we said to you we found a bunch of really special motorcycles, and one of those motorcycles is this. I'm not entirely sure what it is, because it's got a Yamaha motor, but it's got a different chassis, it's got a different fuel tank, and it was built by this man, Mr. Gareth Evans. Gareth, how are you, mate?
For yourself.
Good. Gareth, you're obviously a bit of a two-stroke fan. I've had a bit of a walk around your garage in your workshop here.
Yeah.
You're obviously a bit of a two-stroke fan. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into motorcycles? How long have you been riding motorcycles? And etc. What do you do for a living? What made you who you are today, basically?
So, got my first bike when I was 1, Autojet. My parents bought it for my first birthday.
Your parents or your dad?
Well, both parents. Both my parents were in the. My grandparents were, both sides were against it. I think they caused big fights within the family. But yeah, both my parents have always supported me through the years, been very good. I mean, by the time I was 3 years old, I could ride by myself. I was in the Star newspaper at the time. A couple of years after that, I was racing motocross. Raced motocross most of the way through school, raced scooters and mini motos and all sorts of bikes, and yeah, my parents have at least afforded me the opportunity over the years to follow my passion. After that, after school, did a trade first.
Okay, what did you do as a trade? Because if I'm looking at this motorcycle, I'm going to guess everything here is billet aluminium, hand-turned, hand-made, lathe, machined.
So
you're a millwright or a fitter and turner?
Yeah, good guess. So I did fitting and turning. I actually specialised in sort of machining when I did my trade, but I did a full fitter and turner apprenticeship. Then while I did that, I started studying, and then after I finished my trade, I worked for a little bit, and then I completed my studies in mechanical engineering. Yeah, and I've used that over the years to develop. And I mean, before I even did the trade, I already got into machining and welding. My dad had always been the person to like modify and always improve something. So I'd had a lot of exposure to welding and machining and that even before I did school. I also went to a technical school, which gave me quite a good grounding for what I wanted to do. And yeah, that got me into the bikes. As you can see by the garage, I really do like my bikes and cars and anything that burns fuel, but I especially like the two-strokes. I grew up with two-strokes. I like the sound, I like the smell, I like the simplicity of the two-strokes. So,
and let me guess, you like the power they make?
Oh, of course.
It's cheap power, but it's not cheap power because they guzzle juice a little bit, don't they?
They do. Yeah, this particular bike here, so this as well as my motard both runs on a F-gas and very expensive two-stroke that I bring in from the UK. The reason for the two-stroke is this bike runs on F-gas methanol mix. So as some of you two-stroke guys would know, to mix methanol you can't mix it with normal two-stroke, it's got to be caster based. So I run it on ELF HTX 909, which I bring in from the UK whenever anybody goes to visit there. They got strict instructions to bring back oil with them.
And that's, if I recall correctly, is somewhere around 1,000 rand a litre for a two-stroke oil.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very expensive. It's so bad that Total South Africa won't even bring it in.
At the beginning of the video, I said I came here to look at an RZ350 that you built. What is original RZ350 on here? Because I'm not seeing a hell of a lot of RZ350. It is Yamaha somewhere, but what is original RZ350 on here?
Pretty much nothing.
Right. Okay, so we've established it's not really an RZ350. What is actually Yamaha on it?
The only real Yamaha parts here is pretty much the engine casings.
It's a 350 Yamaha two-stroke casing, yes, with a bunch of clever little bits and pieces that a lot of it homemade or home built by you on your lathes, and you mechanical engineer and a fitter and turner, yeah, and a lot of fancy imported stuff,
yes,
as well, one-off stuff. Your exhaust pipes, for instance, those are built initially were in the UK, but where are they based now?
It's Jim Lomas he's moved to Czechoslovakia.
So the tank looks sort of Aprilia-esque.
So the tank is molded on the original RS250 tank. I try to keep it. It actually flowed with the lines of the frame and everything quite nicely. I started off by getting an aluminium RS250 tank, which I didn't quite like the finish on it. It wasn't as neat as I actually wanted it. So then I moved to a friend of mine, Eugene, who actually also stays in Alberton. He specializes in building one-off and all fancy carbon bits. And he then molded me this tank. So we used a standard RS250 tank, which for the mold, and then all of the working parts within the tank, where the fuel tap goes, all the mountings, everything are made out of 7075 aluminium. The filler is a Rizomo part to bolt into, I don't know what bike it is, but we've drilled it full of holes, cut the thing down to nothing, and actually molded it into the carbon. The other problem was with such big carburetors on this bike, the breathing, getting enough air into the tank and not starving the carburetors for fuel was a big issue. So we put an external breather on it, which obviously gets a lot more air into it. And then while we were busy, we did the tailpiece. This is molded. We used a Merowaki, I think it is a Merowaki a donor, if you want to call it that. And then we remolded it to suit what we wanted. So we closed in the bottom, we made the mountings on top, and then what I did is I took him one of my spare rolling chassis. As I was building this one, I accumulated a couple of RS250s in parts. And then I built the subframe. So I built the first mock-up subframe, and then he started using that to build the carbon around. And then as we developed it over time, I made the final one, and then we put all the holes and everything in the right places, and it was built to suit. The only stuff that's actually RS250 that came out of Aprilia here was the frame and the swing arm are from a donor bike.
But there you've also spent hours polishing and taking off all the forging marks and the casting marks and etc. I can see.
Yeah,
you spent a bit of time there.
So I think I'm in it for in excess of 100 hours worth of sanding and cleaning on the frame and swing arm, and that's including cutting off the original Aprilia engine mounts, but in a way that you can't see it they were ever there, and welding on the new engine mounts for the RZ motor.
Right, and then you've also got some, it looks like BST carbon rims, but you've also had those changed a little bit.
Yeah, so the guys at BST were really good. When I developed or was making the bike, I was going to do my own triple clamps. I didn't want cast bits all over the bike. So when I did the triple clamps, I was looking for a nice set of forks. And how it all went together is the forks are for a Ducati 1299 or something like that. I think they're 1299. And what I did was I spoke to the guys at BST, and they then sent me the models for the wheels, and then I managed to get the models from Olin's for the forks, and then I started piecing the whole lot together to make sure my spacings were right, and then got everything to fit nicely. The triple clamps were loosely based on the RS250 triple clamps, but I changed the trail a little bit to suit the Aprilia GP bikes, what they ran as a trail. The other thing that they also did was one of the rims, because they obviously the rear rims for some other bike and the front rims for the Ducati, one of them had a lip on it. So the guys at BST were nice enough to modify whatever they did, and they made me two wheels with both flat sides with no lips on them,
which look really cool. So your whole intention with this whole bike, we were chatting earlier, you built this bike to be as light as possible and as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So things like your fuel tank, you said, is like the carbon fiber fuel tank, if I remember, he says around about the 1.1, 1.2 kilos. Yeah. The tailpiece is like 700 grams. Yeah. The entire bike, dry weight, you said around 100 kilos?
So when we say dry weight, I think with coolant, with a full radiator, with oils and everything in, would be about 100 kilos.
And is making how many horses?
Never been on a dyno, but based on the build and speaking to Jim Nomas and Jim Hinshaw, which helped me a lot from the States and from Czech, should be around about 100 horsepower. So
1-to-1 power to weight ratio.
Yeah, and it's pretty quick.
It's pretty quick, and you take it out to track days and etc. and have a bit of fun there.
Yeah.
You can obviously ride. I've seen you coming down the road on your back wheel on your Aprilia 550 Super Motard, and you've got a couple of other bikes as well. We're not going to divulge too much more. We're going to have a bit more of a chat. I'm going to take some details down from you, and we're actually going to do a full article in the May issue of RIDEFAST magazine. And everybody, if they want to know exactly what's going on with this bike and what's in this bike and all that work that went into it, they can grab the May issue of RIDEFAST magazine on shelves the first week of May 2022.